Researchers have discovered that pigeons can learn which people are safe, which are risky, and which familiar patterns matter. Welcome to the Pigeon Mind. Subscribe for calm, evidence-led documentaries about the hidden intelligence of pigeons. Today, we explore how a city pigeon may learn your face movement, routine, and presence. Stay to the end because recognition is not the same as simple tolerance. If you watch a city plaza for a few quiet minutes, you will notice something genuinely strange. A single person walks slowly toward a small group of pigeons, resting together on the warm stone. Most of the birds lift away almost instantly in a sudden and noisy scatter of gray wings. But one single pigeon stays behind, calmly holding its place, while all the others wheel away. A little while later, a different person approaches, walking toward that very same patch of stone. This time the very same looking bird rises into the air and quickly retreats with all the rest. The same plaza, the same little bird, but two people and two completely different reactions. So here is a question that is genuinely worth sitting quietly with for just a moment. Could that ordinary pigeon have actually been telling those two different people apart? It is very tempting to say yes, the exact moment we watch the whole thing unfold. But before we trust that feeling, we have to be honest about the simpler explanations hiding there. Many perfectly ordinary things can look exactly like real recognition when seen from a distance. A pigeon that chooses to stay might simply be tracking food rather than a familiar human face. It could easily be responding to a favorite bench or railing instead of one particular person. The time of day matters too, because these birds quickly learn the daily rhythms of a place. The color of a coat can matter, and so can the speed and weight of a person's walk. A slow and gentle approach feels very different to a bird than a rushed and heavy one. And sometimes a bird simply stays put for quiet reasons that we will never fully understand. There is also plain habituation, in which city birds slowly grow used to people in general. A bird that tolerates one passing stranger may in truth simply tolerate everyone who walks by. A single fleeting moment on a plaza simply cannot pull all these tangled causes apart. To separate them properly and fairly, you really need careful, patient, and controlled research. And to answer this exact question directly, researchers once went to a quiet park in Paris. The birds living there were feral pigeons, the very same kind you see on your own street. Two human researchers took part in the work, and they were chosen to look broadly similar. Each of the two people wore a laboratory coat, but in a clearly and obviously different color. Both of these people offered the waiting birds exactly the same kind and amount of food, but the two of them deliberately behaved in two completely and clearly opposite ways. One person stayed calm and entirely neutral, simply standing present among the resting birds. The other person repeatedly chased the pigeons, shooing them away again and again. This careful routine went on across many sessions, repeated patiently day after day. The pigeons were given real time to learn, and learn them apart they certainly did. They steadily began avoiding the chaser, while choosing to stay near the gentle, calm one. Then the researchers quietly changed the rules, and they stopped all of the chasing completely. Both people now behaved in a neutral way, giving the birds no new reason to prefer either. And then the differently colored coats were quietly swapped between the two waiting people. So the real question becomes this: what actually happened once those coats had changed hands? The pigeons firmly kept avoiding the former chaser, even under the brand new coat color. The clothing had clearly moved, but the wariness stayed firmly attached to the actual person. That single careful result tells us something quietly careful and genuinely rather important. The color of the coat, all by itself, simply did not explain the bird's clear choices. If clothing had truly been the cue, then the avoidance would have followed the coat instead. Instead, the avoidance clearly followed the person, right across the change in their clothing. The pigeons were using more stable features to tell two genuinely similar people apart. They treated two quite alike people in two distinctly and reliably different ways. That is individual discrimination, and within a crowded, busy city, it genuinely pays off. A bird that can spot a known threat early can keep a safe and protective distance from it. But we have to be just as clear and honest about what this study simply did not show. It did not manage to isolate the human face as a single and separate working cue. The face was never pulled cleanly apart from posture, from movement, and from context. The study showed no affection at all and no real proof of any kind of lasting memory. It simply and clearly showed learning, which is remarkable more than enough on its own. If clothing was clearly not the key, then could the human face itself carry the signal? Other researchers looked closer at this, and it really helps to keep their work separate. In one careful line of research, homing pigeons were shown a series of human photographs. Some of those photographs were familiar caretakers, while other photographs were total strangers. Some of those tested birds did manage to distinguish the familiar faces from the rest. That is a genuinely striking result, but the real and honest limits truly do matter. The sample of tested birds was small, and their individual performance varied quite widely. These were homing pigeons kept in cages, and not free living birds out on the street. A separate research team worked instead with laboratory pigeons and real living people. Those birds told real humans apart, and cues from the head appeared to genuinely matter. Yet here is the real twist, the part that honestly makes you stop and think hard. Shown later as flat photographs instead, that recognition simply did not transfer well at all. A flat image loses all motion, it loses depth, and it loses the living surrounding context. A real and moving person offers a bird far more information than any still picture ever could. So a bird might know you well in person, and yet completely stumble over your photograph. That very gap itself is actually a real and useful clue about how the skill works. These studies show the ability is real, and so the next honest question is simply how. The most likely answer is association, the simplest and most reliable kind of learning there is. A particular person appears nearby, and then something either good or bad reliably follows. The pigeon quietly links that person to the kind of outcome that tends to follow them. Each repeated encounter over time makes that quiet mental link a little bit stronger. Over many such meetings, the bird slowly forms a quiet expectation about that one person. It then carefully adjusts its behavior, approaching some people and quietly avoiding others. Pigeons turn out to be unusually good at exactly this kind of patient visual learning. They can hold learned information in memory for a genuinely surprisingly long stretch of time. In a crowded and demanding city, this quiet skill genuinely earns its keep every single day. Sorting people fast into safe, neutral, or risky saves precious energy and lowers real danger. The bird only reads past patterns. It does not read minds, and it does not judge character. There is a real trap worth avoiding here, because plain tolerance is simply not the same thing. Getting used to people in general is something very different from truly knowing one person. City pigeons slowly grow tolerant of crowds, far more than any nervous country bird ever would. They let us walk surprisingly close to them, long before they ever decide to take flight. This shrinking flight distance simply means that people here rarely turn out to be dangerous. That broad kind of tolerance applies to all humans as one single and very wide category. Recognition is something far narrower, much sharper, and a great deal more specific than that. Picture a regular daily visitor whom the birds calmly allow to approach within a single step. Now picture an unfamiliar stranger arriving who sends those same birds nervously shuffling back. A shorter flight distance for absolutely everyone is only general tolerance quietly at work. But a different response to one specific person is what truly points toward real recognition. The two of them can look completely identical from a casual seat on a nearby park bench. That is exactly the reason why those careful and controlled experiments truly do matter. So if a pigeon really does single you out, what on earth might it actually be reading? Here we genuinely must stay honest, because the full and complete answer is far from settled. The head and the facial features may very well play a genuinely important part in all this. The overall body shape of a person, and even their posture, may also clearly matter here. The particular way a person moves, their individual gait, could quietly help the bird too. Location and daily routine may also feed directly into the bird's quiet running expectations. The objects a person regularly carries might also quietly become part of the whole picture. And the memory of past encounters, whether good or bad, surely helps to shape the response. Researchers simply have not yet measured how much each separate cue genuinely contributes. The real answer is most likely a blend, with the exact mix differing from one bird to another. The precise weighting of it all stays uncertain, and that simple honesty genuinely matters. Which brings us right back around to you and the birds you quietly pass by every single day. If you actually want to watch carefully, there is a simple, gentle, and respectful method for it. First, look closely for individual markings, an odd bent feather, or a small patch of color. These small telling details are what let you reliably track the very same bird over time. Then return to the same exact location and quietly watch at similar times on different days. Always check the most obvious thing first, whether any food happens to be clearly visible. Food honestly changes everything about how a hungry and motivated bird behaves around you. Then carefully compare its response to you against its response to other nearby people. Record what you actually see across many days, because one single morning truly proves little. And always keep a respectful distance from nests, because the whole aim here is only to observe. Done in this gentle and patient way, your patterns may turn out consistent with recognition. They will never be controlled scientific proof, but they are a real and respectful way to look. Now let us go right back to that bird, the single one that stayed while all the others flew. It may genuinely not see a plaza that is simply full of interchangeable and faceless strangers. Through many small repeated encounters, it may slowly have learned one quiet and steady pattern. One particular person may simply tend to mean food, or safety, or a calm and harmless presence. Another person entirely may instead tend to mean disturbance, or distance, or even genuine danger. But that is not love, it is not friendship, and it is most certainly not any kind of gratitude. It is something far quieter than that, a living animal patiently learning the shape of its world. And through that patient repetition, you yourself may already be a real part of that small world. You could quietly be a known feature, a steady and predictable presence in one small bird's day. So I will gently leave you now with just one simple and genuinely interesting thing to do. Think back to a pigeon that once quietly made you wonder whether it truly knew who you were. Describe the single repeated behavior that first gave you that strange and curious little feeling. Tell me exactly where it happened and how that same bird treated the other people around you. And the next time you cross that plaza, simply pause for a second and look a little more closely.